Hi everyone. The purpose of this presentation is actually updating about civil CSU engineering and the changes that we made. I'm course director of engineering. I'm presenting this with Johan and Jim. First, a little bit background. CSU engineering is based in Bathurst in New South Wales, Australia, 200 kilometers west of Sydney. I'm quite sure some of you actually visited the school. I invite you to come after, of course, COVID's restriction. The school developed to respond to a shortage of civil engineering in the region. So the current course structure that we have is depicted here. We can see that the first 1.5 years the students are they have on-campus study, and then they will allocate it to different organizations as their placement. They get paid during the placements, and they have 4 different placements. The first placement, we call it junior cadet, and then intermediate cadet, senior cadet, and professional cadets. So there are 3 pillars in the curriculum. We didn't change any of those. That the curriculum involved. The first thing you can see in the left side is actually project and portfolio curriculum. During the first 1.5 years, the students were working in a team of 3 to 5 students. They work together. They have challenges, different challenges from EW challenge to challenges or problem from their own community. And then they will have some portfolio. They need to develop their portfolio. They need to have cornerstone thesis after 3 and during the second placement, and capstone thesis at the end. They have this performance planning and review subject. This is actually designed for them to set their goals, review their goals, and interact and reflect on their goals. And the last one, the last pillar we can see in the right side is a topic 3 pillars. This is actually the main purpose of this discussion. And this will be continued next. Students have there are 2 hold points in their course. After 1.5 years, when they are ready, they will place in the workplace. So this is the first hold point for the student, and the second hold point is actually the master level degree. If they continue all the subject that's written before this hold point, they will enter to the next levels. At this time, this year actually, regardless of all the COVID restriction, all the limitations, actually we replace all the students across the placements. You can see different placements across New South Wales, in Brisbane, and we have some opportunities in Melbourne. I'll turn this to Johan. Johan, could you please continue?
Yep, sure, if you can move on. So I want to focus with our very limited time on the topic tree, because problem-based learning, there's a lot of good examples on that. What we didn't want to do was have the traditional standard 8-point subject kind of model. And so what we've done is we've unpacked the underpinning technical content into a Netflix style model. We've identified around 1,000 topics that we deliver in a 3-hour module. And the self-reported data we have from students is the median's about 3 hours and 5 is what it takes. So an average student should take an average of about 3 hours to complete one of these modules. They cover the range of the different topics within civil engineering. We're just a civil engineering school, and that's the nature of the industry push that we have. We call it a tree because the idea was people coming through different routes, there's a common trunk, and then they branch out. We would love to graft your branches onto our tree in the spirit of sharing resources and us having to get the thing written. In return, we can offer you the 650 odd topics we've already got written and some Tim Tams. What you see here is the hierarchical view of the tree, which is how you would ordinarily, no, please go back, Reza. This is how you'd normally, the hierarchical view is how you'd normally design a curriculum, and you'd work out the different clusters of curriculum areas, and then you'd have to work out how many subjects each of them got, and then you'd have to fight the mechanicals to make sure they don't teach structures.
If you turn your head to the side, this is meant to look more or less like a tree, although it's a bit distorted from what you might normally think of as a tree. On that tree, there are various schedules. There's the student engineer schedule A. They have to do these before they go on work placement the first time. Then there are progressively more specialized topics in schedule B and C. T are lab topics primarily. And then when they get to the advanced level, then they specialize in either geotech, water quality, structures, or water engineering. And what you'll see here is topic progress versus time. And each one of those lines represents a unique student. You'll see about now the second cohort comes in and progresses. The troublesome part of this graph are the more or less horizontal lines that appear, and we'll address those in a minute. Those are people who are making little or no progress on the topic tree. Go ahead and go to the next one. And so everything you've seen before is what we currently do. It's not exactly how we laid it out before. What the students are meant to do is very much the same. But if you go to the next slide, Reza. But what we found is everything worked very well if you were self-directed and motivated students. For less driven students, procrastination became a significant problem. The university didn't handle well our structure, our original structure of multi-session and multi-year subjects. And in fact, even at the logistics level of enrolling in a particular subject, when you have multiple versions of a 3-year-long subject running concurrently, some students would sign up for the wrong one. So next slide, Reza. So what we changed is all of our multi-year-long subjects have been broken into 1-year-long chunks. It looks exactly like what Reza showed you earlier. We paired together some shorter subjects that happen during work placement. So during work placement, each student or cadet engineer takes 3 subjects, 1 from each of the pillars. The subject lasts for the entire year. We put in the hold points mostly to make sure people catch up. You can't be a senior cadet if you haven't done basic topics. So you need to make sure that you've completed schedules by a certain time. And at the admissions point, we have removed some of the hurdles or impediments to getting into our course in an attempt to increase student numbers. So this is what the old course structure looks like. And as Reza said, most of the changes have happened on the right-hand pillar. The topic tree subject that was 1 3-year-long chunk is now 3 1-year-long pieces with milestones in the middle. And all students will be rolled into this new curriculum that you're now looking at in the middle of 2021. And those are the Tim Tams that Ewan promised everyone. I'm not sure you will enjoy them quite as much in the current vision as what he had in mind when we were coming to London, but maybe next time. Thank you. Welcome back, Ewan.
Thank you very much. So do we have any questions? Does anyone want to come in and ask any questions before we move on to the next speaker? So either raise your hands or anything in the chat. Just checking through the chat line. Ooh. So maybe I could ask something. I think it's a very interesting model, and I like the way you present there the changes you made. Could you say a little bit about the reaction of some of the students? Obviously, I think this is it's a very different model, perhaps, to what students might be expecting. Do you see any issues with their expectation and how they react to it?
You want to take that, Reza?
Yep, that's actually different from student to student. Because, for example, for those students who said self-directed learning, they are very passionate, and even some of them are in front of the schedules. That's fine. That works well for them. But for those students with procrastination, it's not right. Actually, they seem that they cannot relate this to their progress. They cannot relate it sometimes to their workplace. That's the main issue. The program works for a student specifically when they have some problem in their work and they want to use the topic tree aligned to their workplace. That's works a lot better than if you're doing these topics just for your own pace.
Okay.
Jim, do you want to add more?
I'll just pick up on one of the comments that's in the chat box, and it relates to penalty, which is another advantage of the new model. As we roll students into the new one-year chunk model, then the consequence of not meeting the outcomes for the topic tree subject are drastically reduced. They wouldn't necessarily pass that subject in the topic tree if they haven't done the topics, but instead of having to repeat a 3-year-long subject, it's only a 1-year chunk. But our hope is that the 1-year milestones will look imminent enough that procrastination is less of a problem.
Thank you. Question. Yeah, so that's the straight line issue. One-to-one support. Yeah, I guess that follows on from the procrastination. Do you have to have much more tailored support to make sure that these sorts of issues are picked up early on, or is it all put on the student?
We do offer tutorials, online tutorials or face-to-face tutorials in the case of the first year and a half. And it does create a bit of a challenge when every student can be on a different pathway through the topic tree. Sometimes the tutorial is for 1 or 2 or 5 people instead of for the entire cohort. But as our cadets are, as you saw, dispersed across the country, they get used to interacting with the staff in an online mode. They're happy to flick an email. We're now good at setting up Zoom links, and we can interact with them that way. We encourage them to come to the tutorials in groups rather than individually to help us manage our workload.
Yeah, I'm actually interested by David's comment here about the granularity giving better diagnostics. I mean, often, yeah, we don't necessarily know that a student is struggling until quite a way through the semester in some instances, if there's not so much diagnostic testing going on. Presumably you have an almost real-time evaluation of how students are progressing through the program. Does that help? Have you found a way of taking advantage of that?
It certainly helps us identify students who have disengaged. We know whether or not they're doing topics, as you say, on a real-time basis. And we can also look in particular branches or specialty chains of topics to see if people who are struggling, where Ewan mentioned the 3 hours and 5 minutes average, which is the overall average for all topics. But when we see a student has been engaged in a topic for 6 or 8 or 9 hours, but not yet completed it, then we know they're having trouble in this particular branch, and we can look at the reasons why, or we can reach out and inquire with the student what kind of help they might need.
Yeah, so the question here about does this feel more or look more like an apprenticeship type model of learning? Is that a reasonable?
I'm not sure both of my colleagues would agree, but I have often described our model as essentially an apprenticeship for becoming an engineer.
We tend to avoid that word because in Australia, apprenticeship means plumber or electrician. And so that's the only reason we avoid that word.
Yes, we probably would have been wise to do the same in the UK, but we've launched apprenticeships that go right up to you can be an apprentice academic now. There is a scheme in the UK which is interesting to see. And I think I'll give the final question, and this is mainly because this is the difficult question in my mind, that Becky poses about how this might match with university constraints. I can just imagine the look on some of our central administrators' faces if I suggested some of these things. It would blow their minds of the boxes that we usually have to put things in. Have you had issues of that, or is I presume Charles Sturt is flexible enough to allow this? But maybe there's something you could say about the sort of flexibility you need to make this work.
It's to be
I'll
be
jump
very,
in.
very proactive and speak to them. The 3-year-long subject. So we ran it past him. He said, "Yeah, that looks like a good idea," and now we've had to undo it. I think once they understand why you're doing it and how it fits into the curriculum, and that you're not ambushing them with it, and that you can still do the same quality assurance, it's just sorted out differently, they become more receptive. But I think you do have to be very aware that
I think we've lost you, Ewan.
Yeah, we lost him.
well, you
Oh, he pops up.
may have a blank page to do something, fit into the book of everybody.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much to the Charles Sturt team. A really interesting model. And